You know, sometimes the experts on international politics, international policy, or American foreign policy really screw things up and lose faith, lose trust from the American people. A good example in terms of this latest issue, and also in terms of Ukraine and Russia, but I'm sticking to Israel-Palestine, is the following. One, Biden was not able or willing to quickly call the line on Netanyahu. He was really motivated to show support, and I can understand that. And he had been brought up in his family to be pro-Zion, pro-Zionist, pro-Israel. And he had always been like that as a senator. But he didn't know how to draw the line. He didn't know how to outmaneuver Netanyahu. So he did something unusual. He went to Israel a few days after October 7th and showed solidarity in person, which was, I think, never done before by a U.S. president. Nothing wrong with that, but he should have gotten something in return. He kept trying to get things in return, and his Secretary of State also did. Why can't I remember his name at the moment? It'll come up. And they tried and tried and tried, but they didn't do something that they didn't do. What they didn't do really was something that is so basic. The mothers against drunk driving. Again, the mothers, M-A, against, D, drunk driving. Mad. We're one of the most successful citizens groups, let's say, protest groups, independent, nonprofit group, because they had a very simple, basic message. I mean, they're still out there doing stuff, but the message really caught on, which was, friends don't let friends drive drunk. If you're a friend and you're enticed to be, kind of overly tolerant, which actually is being codependent, which is actually reinforcing a negative behavior, you have to draw the line. You have to tell the friend, no, you can't drive. We're taking your keys. You don't drive drunk. We're not going to let you. Well, Netanyahu was driving not just drunk, but what can we say, out of control, and has been. And it was really predictable. As I said before, my brother and I decided it on day one, October 7th, and we're not, international security experts. But obviously people knew that. Somebody knew that. But it wasn't being adhered to. It wasn't being used, whatever strategy needed to be. But one person in the cabinet warned about it right away. And that was Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, African-American guy who had been, I believe, a brigadier general or lieutenant general in the Iraq War. And he warned against doing a war for revenge, that wars for revenge never end well. And ours was revenge for 9/11, misdirected totally a disaster. He could see what was going on. He got sidelined. You never heard about him. It was only Biden and Secretary of Defense. And Lloyd Austin's name didn't even come up after he made that warning. So Mothers Against Drunk Driving didn't just use that slogan. They were teaching people to do it, okay? They didn't have to go out in the world, every single one of them, and tell people, friends don't let friends drive drunk. What they did was created a movement around that. So that's one thing. The other thing is, why has there not been nearly enough pressure put on Middle Eastern countries, Muslim countries, to help, not militarily, but in all the other ways, humanitarian and rebuilding and so forth, Gaza and the West Bank. like they have a lot of money. Now, the thing is that there's a whole huge split, which a lot of Americans don't understand, between the Sunni Islam, as led by Saudi Arabia, and Shiite Islam, as led by Iran. Now, it was true that the Shiite axis of Iran, Lebanon with Hezbollah, Yemen with the Houthis, and Palestinians with Hamas, were definitely a threat, and were definitely the most extremist. And Israel could have, I think, wiped out Hamas without wiping out the people, as they did with Hezbollah. But anyway, there needs to be a movement supported by the West to pressure the Shiite axis to put down its terrorism, or to focus on rebuilding. All of those countries are basically failed countries. Lebanon's a failed state. Yemen is probably, it has to be a failed state, had no resource and had been in a civil war. And Palestine, at this point, is a failed state as well. So all of them need, and Syria is pretty much a failed state, all of them need, and is Iran a failed state? Not sure. But all of them need massive support, not military. However, there's one thing that I've thought about, and people aren't talking about enough, but probably people at the highest levels are, so I can't possibly know what they're thinking about, is that do the politicians really run international policy when it comes to defense and war? Or is it run by the military-industrial complex, meaning the defense contractors? So what I was wondering is, even if they did a ceasefire, let's say, or when they do a ceasefire, what if there's contracts in the pipeline that they're supposed to send X number of high-powered jets with massive bombs, let's say, to Israel? And it's in the pipeline. I don't know. I guess there's a way to stop it. But the pressure to not stop it would be enormous, because they have a lot of political power. It's not just AIPAC. Everyone talks about AIPAC. Yeah, AIPAC is a negative force. They're a lobby that supports Israel in terms of U.S.-Israel relations. Israel, right or wrong. They don't have any kind of moral position on it. But I think the defense contractors are much more powerful. AIPAC gives money to political candidates on both sides, and they lobby. But military-industrial complex is the power. Anyway, one more thing that I want to say in terms of the big mistakes being done over and over again is the notion that a two-state solution is viable at this point without massive compromises and other things, the details being looked at. So, for example, through the Oslo Accords, Israel agreed to the most liberal or the most progressive, let's say, willingness to work with the Palestinians around a Palestinian state, and that was that they were going to allow 20,000, I believe it was, Palestinian refugees who had left what is now pre-state or pre-1967 Israel. So they were in these villages that were wiped out or sent into exile, and about 20,000 would be allowed to come back to live in those places. That's not nearly the number of refugees, but it's a token symbolic gesture, and it was agreed to. That was the most radical thing. And then the Oslo Accords blew up. And you know what? I should know this. I can't remember why. There's been so many fuck-ups. But certainly the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin in 1995 must have done something about that. So just the idea of a two-state solution, I think, is very, very limited, has very limited chance of succeeding because it's so unilateral. It's so much in Israel's favor, and it does so little to meet the aspirations of a viable Palestinian state.